I mostly read public domain books here on Glenn Reads Books to You, and they were written a long time ago, so they're usually racist, or sexist, or bigoted, but in there somewhere is a story, and that's why those stories are famous. Other times, I read works from independent authors, and they're delightfully not racist, but they might have adult language or adult situations, like, making sex. So that's your warning, but I'm sure you're grown up enough to handle it. Don't write to me complaining. Oh my God, I can't stand this. I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind if she keeps... Oh, son of a... Go on, take a seat, you little idiot. I was just reflecting on the fact that my wife has been drinking, and when she drinks, she turns on That Thing You Do, a film made by Tom Hanks. And she sings along to it every time the song comes on, and she cranks up the volume. The movie is about the song. So the song is playing like every 5 minutes, and every 5 minutes she cranks up the volume and she sings along with it. Welcome to the Glenn Reads Books to You mansion. It's a fun little bit where we pretend to live in a mansion and not just recording in my basement. This is where I read the hottest public domain books and short stories. This week, we're going to read Horsesense Hank Does His Bit by Nelson S. Bond. Want to learn about the author? Well, I hope so. I took the time to steal this from Wikipedia. Nelson S. Bond was born November 23rd, 1908, and died November 4th, 2006. God, that's a long time. Bond was an American writer. His works include books, magazine articles, and scripts used in radio, television, and on the stage. He's a pioneer in early science fiction and fantasy. His published fiction is mainly short stories, most of which appeared in pulp magazines in the 30s and 40s. Many were published in Blue Book magazine. Though Bond largely retired from fiction writing after the 1950s, he's noted for his Lancelot Biggs series of stories and for his Meg the Priestess tales, which introduced one of the most powerful female characters in science fiction. Want to hear some fun facts that I also stole from Wikipedia? Sure. After graduating college, Bond briefly worked for his father's public relation agency. Shortly after joining, he was offered the position of public relations field director for the province of Nova Scotia. This involved meeting celebrities, visiting the province, and writing places about them that were placed in various periodicals. He started selling fiction when he realized he could make more money by writing, sending works to newspapers, pulp magazines, and the more important upmarket slick magazines, slicks in quotes. He started by writing sports stories, but made his first significant sale with Mr. Mergenthwerker's Lobbies. Okay, which was published in Scribner's Magazine, 1937. Bond wrote and sold more for Blue Book than the pulps, which was not only one of the more prestigious, but paid for his work. Bond retired from writing in the late 1950s after encouragement from fans and professionals, and notably Harlan Ellison, who is both famous sci-fi writer and crabby sci-fi writer. He published a new story in 1995. In 1998, the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America made Bond the author emeritus. In 2002, Bond donated his personal papers to the Marshall University Library, which actually created a replica of his home office. That's kind of weird. Bond died of complications from heart problems on November 4th, 2006 in Las Vegas, Nevada. God, I hope the clock goes off pretty soon. Oh, there we go. Well, that's the grandfather clock telling me to shut up and go read this story. Well, there you are. Why don't you get yourself settled as we start to read this story. Can you hear her? You probably can't. Lucky for you, I can hear her. She's cranking up the song right now and singing along to it. Horsesense Hank Does His Bit by Nelson S. Bond. Pearl Harbor got Horsesense Hank mad. Something ought to be done about it, and he was the man who was going to do it. Like the rain-drenched angler said as he reeled in a fish, life is just one damn thing after another. I thought I'd fixed everything all hunky-dory around the campus of dear old Midland U, when I finally got my friend Horsesense Hank Cleaver engaged, his last name is Cleaver, engaged to Helen McDowell, which just goes to prove that you shouldn't count your chickens until they're hitched. Yeah, get it? Because the man stepped in and messed up everything. You know the guy I mean, the chief germ in Germany, the little ex-house painter with a scrap of old paintbrush on his upper lip. First he, quote, protected, unquote, himself against the poor Austrians, then the Czechs and the Poles, then the Norway, Denmark, Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg. Oh, it sounds like a geography lesson, doesn't it? And then France, the Balkans, Greece, and Crete. And finally, as his armies, having come to a copper against the outraged Russian bears, stalled on the icy steps of Moscow's doorway, he invoked the aid of his yellow-skinned and spined allies, the Japs. This book is going to suck. I can already tell this story's horrible. I mean, can you tell? He's already racist as hell. While their envoys calmed Washington with soft words of peace, their air arm bombed Pearl Harbor with grim weapons of war. It was then that Horsesense Hank came to me and said soberly, "Well, so long, Jim. I'll see you later." I asked, hey, where you going? Down to Mike's for a hamburger? Wait a minute, I'll go with. "I'm going further than that, Jim," said Hank, "and the chances are I'll be gone a mite longer. He wriggled a bulldog-tipped shoe from the carpet embarrassedly. "I reckon I'm a-gonna sign up for the duration." I gasped. "You mean the army?" "Well, not exactly. That's EGG. Sackley. I don't figure they'd want me in the fighting forces, me being skinny like I am, but folks say I'm right quick with mathematics and things like that, so if I can be of any help to my country." Hank was not exaggerating a bit. Almost everyone on the Midland campus, including sweet little me, had known more formal education than H. Cleaver. 85% of the faculty members dangled alphabets after their names till they looked like government projects, but Hank could give them all a running start and beat them silly on any question requiring a good old use of old-fashioned common sense. A marveling commentator had awarded Hank the name of scientific pioneer for his uncanny ability to reach answers to problems intuitively, without knowing or understanding the so-called, quote, natural laws, unquote, involved. Hank's aptitude at things mechanical, his infinitely accurate mathematical computations, and homely approach to abstract ponderables had promoted him from a rural turnip patch to the chair of general sciences at our alleged Institute of Higher Learning. It ain't, scowled Hank, as if I was a hard man to get along with. Gosh knows I'm easygoing enough. There's no gainsaying in that. Hank was as quiet and gentle as a carnation cow. What does that mean? And the fact that he had, despite his humble background, won the favor and affections of bilious old H. Logan McDowell, president of Midland, proved his power to win friends. That's win with a capital W and friends with a capital F. Why? I have no frickin' idea. And the fact that he, handicapped by a raw-boned homeliness that would have discouraged any scarecrow, had won the heart and hand of Prixie's daughter Helen, a lass ardently pursued by every male in 4 counties, proved beyond a doubt his ability to influence people. But they just ain't no getting along, continued Hank, with that there Hitler guy, and more gets and more he wants. And now that him and his Japanese pals are forcing us into it, I'm gonna offer my services to whoever can use me. And the word can is just the letter C apostrophe N. I hate when they do this. And where would that be, Hank? Why, I was a-thinking, them plants that make war stuff, he said. They got plenty problems nowadays trying to reorganize fur, F apostrophe R defense work. changing work methods, expanding their facilities, and so on. There's no Northern Bridge, Steel and Girder Company, for instance. Hank, I reminded him, how about Helen? Oh, I reckon Helen and me'll just have to wait a spell, Jim. Atter all, there's a job to be done, and we've got to pitch it and do it. And they ain't gonna be no Helen nor Hank Cleaver or maybe MEBBE, even no USA for us to get married in. So that was that. When Hank Cleaver got those grim lines about the corners of his mouth, there was nothing you could do to stop him. Yeah, I helped him pack his battered old suitcase, and then he went to say goodbye to Helen. She reacted quite as I expected. She listened in astonishment to Hank's awkward explanation. Then she expostulated loudly. Then she sniffed a little, and then she finally wept for a minute, kissed Hank moistly, and told him she was proud of him. Anyway, she said, you'll come home every weekend to see me, won't you? So Hank promised that he would, and off he went. Yeah, that's right, we. I decided to volunteer too. That's me all over. Snoopy Jim Blakeson. Can't keep my nose out of anything. The Northern Bridge, Steel and Girder Company was not so far from our town, only 50 miles, but it was like moving into a strange new world to pass through the portals of that concern. Clatter and bang, and hubbub. Men roaring orders, staccato tattoo of rivets hammering home, the keen metallic smell of molten metal, the bite of rasps, and the chuff of panting locomotives, whatever, it's my show, I don't care. These were the symphonic diasporan of our new headquarters. About us, whistles blew. Throngs of sweating workmen bustled about their fathomless tasks, racing to and fro in an endless stream, and beyond sturdy buildings black with age there ranged yellow rows of newer, flimsier structures. The place had a strangely jejune look, the look of an adolescent who had outgrown his knee breeches, but has not yet the bulk and substance to fill his new long pants. Still, this was a husky youngster. Oh, he would grow. He would grow to fill his new trousers. Yeah, we both felt that. We found the office of that whole analogy was bizarre. We found the office of the company owner. Its doors were guarded by a bevy of underlings who protested hopelessly that Mr. McDonald, who was too busy to see anyone, we brushed them aside and found ourselves at last before the erasable president of the NBS&G. He stared at us in amazement. Oh, he is huge. Brawny Scotsman with eyebrows like feather dusters and a jutting jaw that might have been poured from one of his ingots. After he got his breath, and ooh, he demanded thunderously, "Mitched, really? You be." "Hello, Mr. McDonald," said Hank amiably. "My name is Hank Cleaver." "And who," roared the old man, "mitched Hank Cleaver be to coom a bargin into my office wee-oot invitation? Speak oop, mon. Time is money." "That appears to be," pointed out Hank reasonably. "As now, if time's money, like you say, you'd stop wasting time by asking foolish questions. It don't matter much who I am. The ain't is what, with a U, did I come for, ain't it?" I hate that these two people that are speaking phonetically are talking to each other, and I can't stand reading this out loud. Old McDonald's fiercey face turned 2 shades redder. "Why, ye impertinent young scoundrel," he roared. Then he paused and said thoughtfully, "You're richt. So what did ye coom for?" "A job," said Hank. "A job, with a W. Ye meant tell me ye fierced your way into my office to oosk for a job? The employment office lies doon the hall. Young man, twa doors to," that's the letter T, then Y apostrophe R richt. To your richt. I hate this. Hank fidgeted uncomfortably. "Well, That ain't exactly the kind of old jube that I had in mind, Mr. McDonald. What, with a U, I mean is that I decided to stick my 2 cents in. Bashful as Hank is, it would have taken him all day to explain. Hank means, Mr. McDonald, that he would like to offer his services in executive capacity. Exec dash, exclamation point. This time McDonald couldn't even finish the word. Oh, he pawed his graying thatch wildly. Ye dinna say so? And would the title o' precedent satisfy him, ye think, or may hope? I'd rather be chairman o' the board o' directors. Who are you? I am Jim Blakeson. I was the publicity man for Midland University, I explained, but now I am at your disposal. Where Hank goes, I go. Oh, I don't believe you quite realize who Mr. Cleaver is. Sir, he is Horsesense Hank. And I'm Horsesense Hector, snorted old MacDonald witheringly. So what? It was obvious that he was no newspaper reader, or he would have known Hank's reputation. Mr. Cleaver, I said to him severely, it is a teacher of general sciences at our school. He is well versed in score of subjects germane to your business. Mathematics, civil and chemical engineering, ballistics. Mathematics, bellowed MacDonald, be domed. The NBSNG needs no figure of like numbers. Got it. Yeah, I was on the edge there. I'm like, is this racist? I can't tell. I've got one o' the cleverest ones in the country working for me. My future son-in-law, Johnny Day. Johnny! He strode to the doorway, flung it open, bawled his command. In the doorway appeared a nice-looking kid with fine lips and eyes. Who describes people that way? Johnny, this moan claims to be a... But young Day had stepped forward eagerly, extending a hand to Hank. Mr. Cleaver, this is an unexpected pleasure. MacDonald's jaw played tag with his waistcoat buttons. Ye know him, Johnny? Know him? Why, every mathematician in this country knows and envies the logic of Horsesense Hank. What the hell is going on right now? Are you going to work with us, Mr. Cleaver? Well, squirmed Hank embarrassedly, that's for Mr. MacDonald to say. Seems sort of like he don't want me. But MacDonald, the ozone spilled from his Genoa jib, now backed water like a duck in a whirlpool. What did that mean? Biddy a wee, he puffed hastily. Dinna be in such a roosh, young man. I can't wait for this scene to be done. If Johnny recommends ye, there's a place in this organization for ye. And for your friend, too. Now, let's talk ways and means. Thus it was that Hank Cleaver and I became employees of the Northern Bridge Steel and Girder Company. The job to which Hank was finally assigned was that of estimator, and I was given a desk at the advertising department offices, though to tell the truth, I was in no great shakes as a ballyhoo artist for structural and steel girders and forced braces, having previously boosted the merits of nothing more substantial than a 200-pound line and a 175-pound backfield. But we got along all right, until one day, after we had been working there for a couple of weeks, the boss called Hank into his private office. God, please don't let him talk. I tagged along. Old Mac had a visitor, a slim, prim man, with a ramrod up his spinal column, the hell, and a pince nez on a beak that would dull a razor. Cleaver, said Hector MacDonald, I want you should meet Mr. Grimper. Mr. Grimper, shake hands with Hank Cleaver, my chief estimator. The old man I saw was happy as a lark, about something, happy and excited too. Mr. Grimper, said he, is a government mon, Hank, from the ROTC. OPM, corrected Grimper sourly. At the moment, I also unofficially represent the OEM, the OPA, and the SPAB. No matter, chuckled MacDonald joyfully. 'Tis all the same alphabet, Hank, laddie. We've been drafted for the duration o' the war, and old man in the top hat is talking our plant over fur defense wire. W-A-I-R-K. God, I hate this. I want him to go away in this story. From now on, we're not building bridges and girders. We're rolling armament plate and making shells to bomb the deal and gain yon bloody scoundrel with the foony mustache. What do you think of that? Hank said soberly, Why, that's wonderful. The United States government, said Grimper tautly, will assume all expenses necessary for the expansion of your facilities. When the war is over, the plant with all its improvements will be turned back to you. Meanwhile, a reasonable profit will be allowed you on all defense materials produced. Gosh, gulped Hank enthusiastically. That's swell. We won't let you down, Mr. Grimper. And if you give me a sort of idea what kind of additional facilities you need, I'll get right to work on it. We mustn't waste no time. Grimper coughed preemptively. That's the point I was about to bring up, Mr. Cleaver. We must waste neither time nor money. The war effort is far too important to be disturbed by, other factors. That is why I asked Mr. McDonald to call you. You see, our organization has its own estimate staff, composed of men trained to do precisely the type of work that will be required here. Consequently, under a new setup, you will be an unnecessary cog in an already perfect machine. I trust you understand, Mr. Cleaver. Hank stared, stricken. You mean that you don't want me here anymore? Well, to be accurate, replied the government agent, we don't need you, That is, in your present capacity. However, I have no doubt that a man like yourself, familiar with all angles of the steel industry, will find a niche. But I ain't, moaned Hank. I wasn't in this business till a couple of weeks ago. What? Grimper stared at him, then at the owner of the company. I don't understand, Mr. McDonald. Is it this man your chief estimator? Oh, he must have had some experience. Hank, confessed the old man, was a professor. Oh, P-U-F-F-E-S-S-O-R. Professor. God damn it. A what? Teacher, said Hank miserably. I taught stuff and things at Midland U algebra, a little general science, and a smattering of this or that. You mean, with such a background? Well, I know what you're thinking, imposed old MacDonald hastily. And 'tisna so. Mr. Cleaver earned his job the hard way. The fairest day he set foot in here, I ordered him out, but he made me swallow my words, and now I consider my services invaluable. Still, frowned Grimper, Mr. Cleaver's talents are not sufficiently remarkable to justify his presence on such a project as what we were talking about embarking on. We have our own engineers and mathematicians in Washington. Why, I am an efficiency expert myself, trained to handle emergencies. At that moment, the office door inched open. The old man glanced upwardly. Miss Cole, what is it? 3 of the shop foremen, sir. They say they must see you immediately. Ye'll excuse me, Mr. Grimper. Vera well. Let him in, Miss Cole. Then, as 3 grim and grimy men shouldered angrily into the room, well, what's the motor? Don't stoned there, glaring at either. Time is money. Speak oop. Gorman, foreman, of the maintenance department spoke for the trio. Well, it's the new tools we ordered, Mr. McDonald. The shipment just arrived. Then worry blathering about. We've been howling blue murder for weeks because they were delayed. Divide 'em up and get to work. That's just it, fumed Hendricks, of testing. They couldn't send us the complete order, Mr. Mack. They've sent only 17 sets, and we can't divide them up. They don't come out even. Even, repeated Grimper surreptitiously. Mulvaney, the construction foreman, complained. I'm supposed to get 1/2 of all materials ordered, sir, but I can't take half of 17. Gorman's supposed to get 1/3, and Henry's supposed to get 1/9. Our problem is, how are we going to divide them? Grimper said, Aren't you gentlemen making much ado about nothing? The answer seems to be very simple. Just open the crates and distribute the tools in their proper proportions. And he beamed at old Mac triumphantly, but his grin was short-lived. Gorman's sniff was one of pure disdain. Didn't you hear Henny say them tools come in sets? He snorted. I'd look pretty, wouldn't I, mister? Screwing a loose nut with 1/3 of a screwdriver. And Henny would go down to town, measuring rivet precision with 1/9 of a caliper. Well, old MacDonald guffawed loudly. I'm afeard he's gwot ye there, Gimper. Hank, had ye any idea what to do? Cleaver I hate this episode. I hate reading all this. I wish this wasn't 90% of the book. Cleaver had been scratching his cranium. Now he had said thoughtfully, we-e-ell. Maybe I have, Mr. Mac Joe, can you borrow another set o' them tools from supplies? Gorman said swiftly, No, I can, but I won't. I want my full share of the order, Hank. I don't want no debt against my department in supplies. There won't be, but let's suppose for the moment you have borrowed a set. Now, how many sets would you have? Why, 18, of course. Sure. Now, Mike, you get half them sets. 9, right? And Joe, you get 1/3. Or 6. Satisfied? Bill, your department gets 1/9 o' the order. 2 complete sets, okay? Well, boys, there you are. Everybody happy? Everybody but me, stormed Joe Gorman. I've got a set of tools charged against me in supplies. That's the idea, all right, for these lugs. Maybe I've got my rights. Well, now take it easy, soothe Hank. 82609 is only 17, Joe. There's still 1 set left over, and now you can return that one to supplies. Well, I'll be damned, said Mulvaney. And on that note, of sincere if profane admiration, the department heads disappeared to divvy up the disputations shipment. With an air of, I told you so, old Mac turned to rather acid-looking Grimper. Just the letter Y. See, Mr. Grimper, indispensable. That's what he is. Ye maun do wheel fur to reconsider this motor. But there was a streak of mules 6 feet tall and 2 feet wide, and the federal man, he sniffed down his long, thin nostrils and studied Hank through his pince-nez with detached interest. Harumph, he harumphed. Very interesting, but not at all new, you know. Hardly mathematics at all. In fact, a numerical paradox based on an old Arabian legend. If I'm not mistaken, and I did what flatbushers would call a slow burl, in other words. I was buoyed up, but while I was still striving for words, young Johnny Day, who had entered his office, came charging into Hank's defense. Oh, my God, what the hell do you want? My wife is staring at me through the door. Just her forehead and eyeballs. And fingertips. What are you, horny again? What's wrong with you? Well, I'll ignore satisfying her with my loins and continue reading this book. Maybe it's not mathematics, he raged, in the pure sense, but it's something more valuable. Common sense. Any man who can pop up with a quick answer to a problem like that is a handy guy to have around. You are an efficiency expert, Mr. Grimper, but you had no solution to offer. Grimper's lean jaw tightened. His eyes grew as cold as a ditch digger's ears in Siberia. Whatever slow beginnings of humanity might have been wakening in his bosom died now. I'm sorry, gentlemen, he said in a tone of finality, which meant he wasn't at all, but I am convinced. I presume, Mr. MacDonald, that you want this government order. Not really, that's one word, grudged old Mac. Then, primely, you must accept my decisions on questions of policy. Mr. Cleaver, you are hereby granted 2 weeks in which to clear up your affairs around this plant, at the end of which time your services will no longer be needed. I trust you will find suitable employment elsewhere. And he smiled, a mean, oily little smile. The heel. So that, lads and lassies, was that. Hank was OUT on called strikes. But if you think he just quit trying to do his share because a fortnight's deadline was hanging over his head, you don't know old turnip torturer Cleaver. I almost feel like we need to stop in the middle of the show just to review what the hell we've been reading, but we got to save that for the end of the show. So instead, why don't we go down to the basement? And I can tell you about the latest upcoming books from Penguin Random House. It's not weird. My basement's fine. Just go downstairs. Well, there you are. Welcome to my basement. As you can see, I've tried to make it all cool, like the basement from that 70s show. I got a little couch, got a little tube television that I can't figure out how to hook up my Google TV to. I got a cute little coffee table and a rug. So don't feel uncomfortable. This is a cool place to hang out where teens get high and have a great time. Why don't you sit in this folding chair underneath this naked light bulb as I stand here underneath this naked light bulb and let you know about the latest upcoming books from Penguin Random House. Writing a C Compiler, Build a Real Programming Language from Scratch by Nora Sandler. About writing a C Compiler, it's a fun, hands-on guide to writing your own compiler for a real-world programming language. Compilers are at the heart of everything programmers do, yet even experienced developers find them intimidating. For those eager to truly grasp how compilers work, writing a C compiler dispels the mystery. This book guides you through a fun and engaging project where you'll learn what it takes to compile a real-world programming language to actual assembly code. Writing a C compiler will take you step by step through the process of building your own compiler for a significant subset of C. No prior experience with compiler construction or assembly code needed. Once you've built a working compiler for the simplest C program, you'll add new features chapter by chapter. The algorithms and book are all in pseudocode, so you can implement your compiler in whatever language you'd like. Along the way, you'll explore key concepts like, lexing and parsing. Learn how to write a lexer and recursive descendant parser that transforms C code into an abstract syntax tree. Program analysis. Discover how to analyze a program to understand its behavior and to detect errors. Code generation. Learn how to translate C language constructs like algorithmic operations, function calls, and the control flow statements into x64 assembly code. Optimization techniques. Improve performance with methods like constant folding, dead store elimination, and register allocation. Compilers are terrifying beasts, and with help from this hands-on assembly guide, you might even turn them into friends for life. Want to hear some praise? Sure, why not? Quote, have you written C code and really wondered how this turns into code that runs on a processor? Well, Nora's book will not only help you see that, but it will help you understand how to do these sorts of translations for your own assets in language and code accessible to people without PhD in compilers, says Lars Bergstrom, Director of Engineering at Google. This book is a great introduction to the topic of compilers for programming languages. It's extremely thorough with many suggestions for further reading, while being quite enjoyable to read. A, quote, soups to nuts, unquote, treatment of compiler writing for C-like languages, says John Reppy, professor of computer science at the University of Chicago. One last one. It's refreshing to read a book on compiler design with a focus on implementing a practical real-world language, rather than working through dry academic exercises. Practical, fun, and exciting to read if you're sick of reading textbooks on the subject, says Rick Battlegline, author of The Art of WebAssembly. Well, that sounds exciting. You want to learn something new? Why don't you learn about writing a C compiler from Nora Sandler? You can get this in paperback for $69. Oh, my Lord. How big is this paperback? August 20th, 2024. You can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop.org, Hudson Booksellers, Powell's, Target, and I imagine this incredibly thick paperback book about computer programming for a compiler is, if anything, going to accidentally fall off the shelves because they'll only ever have one copy of it at this place, and it'll fall off the shelf and land on the floor, and people will use it to stand on it, to get a book on a higher shelf that they can reach by using it as a kind of stool to help them reach something that they enjoy more. And you'll experience this sad little moment where someone can get this book and learn from it and move themselves into a new career universe. At Walmart! Well, with that, why don't we go back upstairs and just try to get through this goddamn story? Well, there you go. Why don't you get yourself settled? Let's dive back into the story. The Northern Bridge, steel, and etc. still needed estimating, so Hank labored straight on through till the last day, lending his individual, if unwanted, talents. Thus it was on that Saturday afternoon he drew his final paycheck and still not cleared out his desk drawers and lockers for the next incumbent. He told me so at dinner. I asked, well, that's the program, Hankus. After we feed, we grab a choo-choo. What is going on? But he just stared at me. We, Jim, burp. But you wasn't laid off. Birds of a feather, I told him. Flop together. I go where you go. He shook his head. Oh, no, Jim. Thanks a lot, but you gotta stick. This ain't no time for individuals. Oh, my God, the way they spelled individuals with a J. To fuss and argue. Oh, we got a war to win, and wherever a man is needed, he's gotta stay. But how about you, Hank? Oh, I'll find something else to do. When we're through eating, I go back to the plant and pick up what belongs to me. Then I'll mosey along. I sighed. Well, all right, chum. If that's the way it is, that, he assured me, was the way it was. So we went back to the plant at about 8:30 p.m. That's where the final insult was added to injury. For after we passed the gate, a slim, foreboding figure stepped from the shadows to halt us with a challenge. Just a moment. Yeah, who goes there? I started. And then I grinned impudently. Oh, it was friend Grimper in person. Not an effigy. I said, just a brace Nazi spies, pal. Just a brace of Nazi spies. All right, whatever. Don't shoot till you see the yellow down our backs. Oh, the government man edged forward ostracously. And what are you two doing back at this time of night? Blake, son, you have no right to be here after 6 o'clock, and your friend has no right here at any hour. I said, why, you two for a nickel imitation of a G-man? Oh, but Hank, unruffled as ever, said calmly, easy does it, Jim. Why, Mr. Grimper, I just came back to gather up the stuff in my locker and desk. It won't take me long. Grimper said sourly, Wheel. That's a bunch of E's. All right. But I'll go along with you. We can't afford to give strangers the run of the mill nowadays. Constant vigilance is our only defense against saboteurs and espionage agents. There are valuable military stores within these gates. Strangers, I spat disgustedly. You got a hell of a nerve, Grimper. Hank Cleaver volunteered his talents to this concern before you even knew it existed. Services, said Grimper coldly, which ended today. And I should not be surprised, Mr. Blakeson, if yours were to be terminated soon. Well, come along. So we entered the plant. Oh, and of course, it was black as a whale's belly in there. Don't know what that means. But you think Dopey Joe would let us turn on any lights? Oh, no. Oh, he had ideas about that, too. He was fuller of ideas than a Thanksgiving turkey is of chestnuts. Yeah. He commanded, you will use a flashlight, please. No one ever knows what prying eyes may be upon us. Well, there are a couple of eyes, I glared. I'd like to pry with double pinkies. Hurry up, Hank, get your things and let's get out of here. There's a bad odor around here, and it's not oil fumes, Hank emptied his desk drawers, and we picked our way down the darkened corridors, through the machine shop and turning room, toward the lockers. We had one more room to cross, the drafting room. wherein he stored all the blueprints and testing models. Oh, we were halfway across this with our tiny flashlight beam, a dim beacon before our stumbling feet, when out of the gloom, suddenly, terrifyingly, a voice. Halt and see sitch. Not a move. Otto, get them. Oh, don't ever ask me about the next few minutes. Oh, I was there in body only. My mind was as blank as a 4th of July cartridge. I remember seeing figures, 2 or 3 or 20, darting toward us. And I remember yelling, ducking, and punching with one and with the same motion. I remember hearing guttural voices, snarling commands that ended mostly in Gwerden-scene. So it must have been German. I remember feeling with satisfaction a pert of sticky warmth deluge my knuckles as I hit the jackpot on some spongy that howled. Oh, I remember, too, hearing Hank gasp, Judas Priest, German spies, just before his lanky length toppled under the impact of an accurately welded blackjack. And I remember my last conscious thought, that when I got a chance, I must offer an apology to Sourpuss Grimper. Because of that thin, hawk-nosed stencil at Superiority Plus, was, as ever, well, else it was his faults, a bang-up fighting man in a pinch. Oh, with a fury incredible in one of his size and build, he was lying about like a demon. One hiney, was peacefully slumbering at his ankles already. Second was bawling for assistance. Hiney? Then 3 or 4 or 1,000 of them rushed at me at the same time. I remember something playing heavy, what bangs over your head, above my cranium. Then that's all I do remember. A bomb exploded in my cerebellum, and I went Betty bye. I had a nice little dream. I dreamt that I was in Spain during the Inquisition, and a black-robed priest had me fastened to a windlass. And he murmured pious paternosters in my ears. He was gently screwing the instrument tighter, and I was gasping with pain, and my arms slowly, grindingly withdrew from their sockets. Well, I wriggled, emitted a muffled howl, and awakened to find the dream based on cold, brutal fact! Exclamation point. My mouth was full of cotton waste, slightly worse for wear, explained my muffled tones. My arms were tied together with a short scrap of hemp. This length had been passed through the draw chain of a skylight, and thus securely locked. I hung dangling like a pendulum with my toes barely scraping the floor. Nor was I only trussed duck in this tableau. My pal Hank was swinging on the other skylight chain a few yards away, while Grimper made it on a three on a ratch. The government agent was luckiest of us all. He was out cold, and so he didn't have to listen, as Cleaver and I, to the gleeful chucklings of our saboteurs. The chuckling they were, like hooded villains in a Victorian melodrama. Melodrama? Oh, my God. Apparently, one of the 2,000 of them had gone home because there was now only about a half dozen. But these 6 were the nastiest-looking Nazis I'd ever hope to see again. Beetle-browed thugs, fine examples of pure Aryanism, and her Schickelgruber is always bragging on. They had been rifling the plant as we happened in, I guess, because the floors were strewn with litter of papers and blueprints and diagrams, schematics, and formula. As my bleary eyes opened, one of the foragers was complaining to the chief rascal. Nothing here, Schlegel. This search has been of no value. And you, I piped up rather feebly, are a nest of rats. What's the big idea? Untie us or... The ringleader turned, grinning unpleasantly. Or, he sneered, what, Schweinhund? Ooh, Schweinhound. So, Carl, noting that we can use is there, very well, it matters not. When we leave, we shall plant and make useless the verdammt Amerikansk, whatever. He called to others of his cohorts, scattered around the room. You ready? When I give the word, ignite. Polecat number 2 jerked a dirty thumb in our direction. How about them, Schlegel? Schlegel's grin would have congealed hot toddy, but we leave them here. Of course, but the other man fingered a blunt nose automatic. Hopefully, would it be safer to... 9, chuckled Schlegel boastfully. We shall not make bullet holes in their carcasses. The cleverest part of my plan is, that is why we tied them thus. The same fire that destroys them will devour the ropes around their wrists, dropping their bodies to the floor, leaving no evidence. The investigators will believe they started the fire, and so will not search further for us. Oh, he laughed coarsely, ha, 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 and poked me in the ribs. That's amusing, it. Nachtschwar, mein Freund. Yeah, I answered grimly. It's a howl. Just like kidnapping Polish girls and executing innocent hostages. You filthy! I wrestled savagely with my bonds, but my efforts just sent lancets of pain burning through my already groaning armpits. I glanced at Hank, but he was still hanging quietly from his chain, his eyes closed, his head loud forward upon his chest, loud. He, like Grimper, was blissfully unconscious. Now came to an end the German taunts. He swung to his sides, rapped swift commands, matches scratched, flares were thrust instantly into heaps of piled rubble, tongues of flame rose, wavering, strengthened, licked hungrily higher as an inflammable material ignited. For the first time, a sense of real fear filled me. Up till this moment, the whole affair had seemed so fantastic, so maddeningly unreal, that it had been sort of a wild dream. And now I realized belatedly, suddenly, completely, that this was really happening to me, here, in the heart of the USA. This was war. And we had met the enemy in battle, and had lost. Oh, and there's a picture of Horsesense Hank being held up. I realized, too, that something more vital than just our 3 lives are in danger. This building, up the wooden walls of which angry rivulets of fire were now creeping, was an important cog in Uncle Sam's total war effort. Destroyed, it meant loss of precious material to the Allies. Hundreds of eager hands restrained from putting into employment the tools for which forged the weapons of democracy. Oh, thousands of tanks and guns and aircraft withheld from fighters who needed them. But we were helpless. The more so now because our captors were scurrying from the room like rats from a sinking ship. As the gloom lighted to ochre, they hurried to a door, slipped through it, and the clank of metal upon metal meant they had dropped the lock bar into place behind them. Trapped! Trapped! To die like moths in a flame! But a moth had wings. We had none. Our hands were pinioned to an inaccessible pillory. I writhed again, a moan wrenching from my lips as my shoulder muscles strained and tore. And then a calm, familiar voice speaking to me. The voice of Horsesense Hank. I wouldn't do that if I was you, Jim. 'Twon't help none, and it may just make matters wuss. I gasped. Hank? This is some guy that says 'twon't, but also says makes matters wuss. I gasped. Hank, thank the Lord you're alive. I was afraid maybe you... I'm all right, said Cleaver gently, just stunned a little. I come to a few minutes ago, but I figured as how I mought as well keep my eyes and mouth shut. No sense letting the enemy know you got your wits about you. I calculate... His eyes studied the ever-fanning flames with incredible detached interest. Things spreading fast, hey? Do you reckon the fire department will be able to catch it afore it ruins the whole plant? I'd give $1 million, I told him honestly, to be here to find out. 'Pears to me, must Hank, like they will. That's green wood, you know. Don't burn as quick as seasoned timber would. Yep, I low as I howl, them spies won't do as much damage as they planned on. That, I moaned, would be a great consultation to us when they bury our ashes. Or which? Hank stared at me curiously. Oh, you mean, why, hell, Jim, we ain't dead yet. And at this point, another voice intruded itself in our conversation, the dry, resigned voice of Mr. Grimper. No, not yet, gentlemen, but I am afraid it's time to prepare for our fate, for we are hopelessly secured. The doors are locked and bolted upon us, and in a few minutes the room will be a furnace of flame. Exclamation point. I shuddered. Of course, this prophecy was not news to me, but it made our peril more real to hear it thus spoken. His words, however, completely failed to disturb the placidity of Horsesense Hank. Hank had said, "Oh, I low, Mr. Grimper. I was hoping you'd snap out of it purty soon. Die? Why, we ain't gonna die. Not since them Nazis was too dumb to tie us up." My heart gave a sudden leap. Oh, I had to swallow before I could choke. Tie us? What do you mean, Hank? We are tied. And to something far above our heads. We can't even reach the bar we're chained to. Oh, we don't have to, Jim. Oh, they gave us a loophole against within reach. You notice that their skylight chain is a right thin one? I can't get these ropes loop off my wrist, but I think I can squeeze the skylight chain through the loop. He straightened his legs, and suddenly I realized he had purposely kept them slightly bent at the knees during the time our enemies had been in the room. Now his toes gave him a reasonable foothold on the floor. Using this, he leapt up and ripped the steel chain from above the ropes. He drew himself up hand over hand until he was swinging comfortably in the loop. What he did then was weird and inexplicable to me, until, of course, a long time afterwards, he pushed the steel chain through one of the rope loops about his wrist, pulled a wide metal bright through his opening, and stepped into the loop, and drooped slightly to the floor. Free! Oh, the only encumbrance of him was a length of hemp between his arms, but now he was at liberty to approach us, as it was a matter of minutes for him to unloosen our bonds and have us untie his! Exclamation point. Grimper's jaw had dropped to the bottom vest button. Slow comprehension dawned on his features. He gasped. A problem in applied topography. Astounding. I can hardly believe my eyes, but it's completely logical. Mr. Cleaver, I owe you an apology. Please allow me to topographa which? Asked Hank interestedly. I didn't know it had no name, Mr. Grimper. Just appeared to me like as if a circle's got an inside and an outside, and we was in the inside, so we wasn't tied up at all, rightly speaking. Well, let's get out of here. Well, he might make the suggestion, for all this had taken time. As we labored to free each other, we had heard excited hubbub gathering outside, the wail of fire sirens sounded, and the yammer of voices raised in command, but a stream of water was already beginning to play upon the wall. Burp. But in the meantime, the fire had gained headway. The walls of this room were ruddy sheets of flame. The narrow circle of safety in which we stood was rapidly dwindling. And my skin was beginning to crack and blister with oven fierce heat. I croaked despairingly. Oh, but how, Hank? We're free, yes, but the doors are still locked, and the windows. Why, the skylight, Jim, drawled Hank. That is our exit. Hey, grab him. I whirled just in time to catch the falling frame of a government agent Grimper. The thin man had come to an end at his endurance. His heart was stout and courageous, of all proportion to his physical makeup. With a stifled cry, he fainted dead away. Well, there you are. One moment we're on our road to a happy ending, and bing, really bing, all of a sudden the three gray ladies slap us in the puss with a damp mackerel. What the hell? I stared at Hank fearfully with moistened, parched lips. What will we do with them, Hank? We can't just leave them here to die. Hank stroked a lean and thoughtful jaw. Sort complicates matters, don't it? He queried. Oh, let's see. We couldn't hist him, could we? I said bitterly, I can't, Hank. I hate to admit it, but I'd be a damn liar if I pretended otherwise. Oh, I'm so weak. My armpit's so badly strained that it'll all be can do to lift myself. Can you? Hank shook his head miserably. Nope. I didn't jump off in that chain just now, Jim. I fell off. Hanging up there like jerked meat wrenched something in my back. I calculate I can climb that chain myself, but I couldn't hist nobody else's weight. Wait a minute. Wait. He repeated the word more loudly. A gleam brightened in his eye. Sure, dead weight. That's the answer. Here, give me a hand, Jim. And we got to lash him to one stand of this pulley chain. Use them ropes. Got it? Okay, tie him right now. He's tied, I puffed. The smoke was beginning to get me now. Tears were coursing down my cheeks. Time was getting perilously short. Well, what do we do next? Get on the other end of that chain, ordered Hank, and climb. What? And leave him dangling there below? But it only saves our lives, Hank. See, the flames are right on us, and we don't have time to reach the skylight and haul him up. Do what I tell you, roared Hank, and hurry. There was more vehemence in his voice than I had heard at any previous time. Oh, it shocked and startled me into activity, and I leapt for the side to the draw chain opposite of that which Grimper was hanging limp. Began climbing like a monkey, hand over hand. The dangling chain drew taut above me, and I saw that Hank, too, was climbing. I looked for Grimper, and Grimper was above me. Oh, as Hank and I climbed one side of the chain, the agent's inert body was being hauled up by the other. Oh, he reached the cool sanctuary of the skylight before we did, and lifted to safety by our combined weights before I remembered the old monkey weight and pulley game that one time caused a near riot in a state academy of savants. So all's well that ends well. It was easy matter to unleash Grimper when we had reached the roof. An easier job to hurry him down of a fire escape to the ground. And as my ever-logical friend had guessed, the fire laddies put out the blaze before it spread to adjacent buildings. Thus, what might have proved a serious loss to America's offense was held to a minimum. One building which could be easily replaced. We didn't leave the town that night. We were exhausted. For one thing or for another, Hank was in no condition to board a train. His suitcase had been destroyed by the fire, and he was ruefully confessed to me that when I asked his reason for backing away from the wildly cheering mob that escorted us to the hotel, the fire burp had got in one last farewell lick as we'd escaped. Said caress had singed a neat, round hole in Hank's southern exposure. I get it. Whatever. The next day, there was a hurry call from Johnny Day. Oh, they had caught the saboteurs? They thought they had. We could please come and identify them. So we did. And they were. And the Jerrys were taken into custody by a detail of granite-eyed soldiers who gripped their garans as they hoped Hitler's hirelings would break for freedom, which of course they didn't. No longer holding the whip hand, they were the meekest, humblest-looking skunks you ever saw. Oh, it was that Grimper, so trim and fresh that you could never know he had been almost baked. Grimper au jus moved toward to shake Hank's hand. Last night, Mr. Cleaver, he said, I apologize to you. This morning I want to repeat my apology and wish you all possible success when you leave here. Hank just blushed and wiggled his little bulldog-tipped shoe into the carpet. That's all right, Mr. Grimper. And if you would take it like that, I couldn't. In a fury, I stepped forward and shoved my nose into Grimper's pan. You may be an agent of Uncle Sam, I snarled, and a joy to your loving mama, but you're a pain in the pants to me, Grimper. You got one hell of a nerve. This man saved your life at McDonald's plant after you fired him. And now you've got the almighty guts to wish him bon voyage? Well, I for one. But surprisingly, it was old Mac who stopped me. Now take it easy, Blakeson, he said. 'Tisna the time to gripe and grouse. Mr. Grimper's keens his duties as an agent o' Uncle Sam. I hate this. There's a certain, that's really spelled that way, amount o' accuracy, and what he says. There is no fitting place for Hank's peculiar talents. Oh, my God. If not here, I howled, then where on earth? Now, Jim, begged Hank mildly. But the answer came from Mr. Grimper. A smile split his lips and a scrawny little fighting cock. Why, in Washington, of course, he said. Like all humans, I make mistakes, Mr. Blakeson, but when I discovered I tried to rectify my hastiness. Therefore, I today wired Washington that Mr. Cleaver is on the way. Oh, and he will act as personal confidential advisor to President Mr. Cleaver. Do you think you'll like that? But he got no answer from Horsesense Hank, for that gentle man had fainted dead away on the floor. And me? Oh, well, I slumbered blissfully beside him. Where Hank goes, I go. And then there's an illustration showing how they're being hung, which says Hank's problem here was similar to those interesting ones presented by Messrs. Krasta and Newman in their fascinating volume, Mathematics and the Imagination. The captives are not truly bound so long as freedom of leg movement permitted them to convert their bonds into a thinly connected manifold. Okay, well, with that, why don't we try to shake this off and head downstairs to the smoking room where we can review what the hell we just read. Well, there we go. That turned out to be way longer than I would have liked it to be. Why don't you take a seat? There, in front of you at the coffee table is a baboon skull, and if you remove its head, you can see it's filled with cigarettes. And there's also my wife's birds. What do we learn today? We learned that a man who comes off as very simple is apparently the smartest man in the world, and no one appreciates him. But also he's so smart and humble that he doesn't mind. He just wants to serve his country. And then, for no reason at all, at this plant that I guess is important, normally those places are just bombed by airplanes back in World War II. Like there's a munitions factory, well then just go bomb it. Instead, they send these like 50 Nazis in to sneak into America and then go after, this one place, and then just like light it on fire. A little unreasonable, a little silly. You'd think that they would just have one guy go in there and just like set off a bomb or something. I don't know, whatever. It wasn't really well thought out. And Horsesense Hank is full of a lot of quips that are misspelled, and I hated every minute of it. I don't know. And also his boss was even worse than the way Horsesense Hank talks. And there's kind of nothing really to learn here. I don't really know what to take away from this story. I guess the thing to take away from this story is that adventure fiction during the time of the Nazis was not usually very good. So there you go. There's that. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Well, it appears you found me in the part of the podcast I hate the most, where I tell you all about the places on the internet where you can find me. You can tell I hate this because of the sound effects making it sound like a stormy night in the drawing room of the damned. Now, there's that. Are you cool? I like cool people. It's the reason why I got involved in this business to begin with, just to meet cool people, not losers. So if you're cool, feel free to go over to my website, nuzzlehouse.com. But if you go there, you get to hear some of the other stuff that I and my wife work on, like the Radio Mystery Theater show, where we try to recreate the same show that used to be on in the 70s, but they don't make any episodes anymore. So we make our own, and we just steal all their commercials. And also, just in the curious mind, we made a Christmas album. If you go to our link tree, you can see that we made a Christmas album. It's the first thing we did after getting married, which I think everyone should do when they get married, is start talking about the Christmas album they're going to make. And we're working on a new show where we give relationship advice by reading paranormal smut. And since I think you might be cool, you can always just email me directly, glenn.nuzzles@gmail.com. But don't email if you're a nerdlinger or a dork. Now, back to business. I can't believe I drank all of them already. There's got to be one left.